Alright guys, welcome back. Today I want to do something that nobody has ever attempted. I want to make a tier list concerning the best decks that you should invest in for the future. So the best decks in the future. I want to show you which the best investment decks are. So go and buy them. The decks that have the most potential, the decks that have even more potential. We will see whether we will need to use this additional category over potential here, and the ones I would not get or would not invest into. And with so many decks on the line here, let's start here so that the video doesn't become too long. I will not say too much to all of the decks, but just give a quick overview basically. One of the decks that you can definitely invest in, if we will put it in more potential as of right now, obviously the decks that are newer will still receive support waves, but also we already know about some meta future trends from the OCG. So we have Goblin Biker, they will receive additional support, making the deck way better. So if you have the very cheap Goblin Biker core that at the moment doesn't really cost anything, then you can definitely go ahead and grab that, play this deck now, get a bit like of a feel for the deck, and then invest in the future support that might be a bit more ultra rare heavy, we will see. But because not a lot of people are playing this deck, I don't think it will be, honestly. It will be more of a side archetype that does not receive that many ultra rares. So I think Goblin Backers is a really nice deck that is cheap and has a lot of potential in the future. One of these strongest decks at the current moment is obviously Ritual Beast. Will this deck have more potential in the future? It kind of depends. I would say it has some potential here. I have watched the video of the very successful Ritual Beast player where I also have basically linked you the guide that he made, the 1 hour video guide to this deck in the description of the Ritual Beast combo guide that I did. The thing is that he is mentioning the fact that against or in a meta where there is Dominus Impulse, the new card from Rage of the Abyss, as well as 3 Mulch Army Fuvalos, as well as Maxis and Perulias, this deck has obviously a really hard time since it summons from the hand a lot, from the extra deck and deck a lot. And then also Dominus Impulse is really good against a lot of these decks. If you're not aware, Dominus Impulse is basically the trap that basically let you play the trap from hand whenever your opponent controls a card, or if your opponent controls a card, and then you can negate the activation of a special summon card basically. And if you also have a trap in your graveyard, you can destroy it. So he was talking about that the deck is not the right pick for the current format in the TCG, and since the format in the TCG is what we are getting in the future, I guess this is a deck with potential. Right now is very strong, but obviously we have just received support for this, so keep that in mind when going for this deck. I think one of the best invests, more potential best invests, hard to say here. Let's put it in more potential for right now, because the thing that basically speaks against Voices Voice is that it's very expensive, but this deck will be very nice in the future when everyone is playing Fuvalos in the main deck. Will we see Fuvalos in the main deck and Master Ruler remains to be seen there, depending on how much Fuvalos we see in the deck. And the TCG is at the moment a very good deck in the OCG as well, because it has such a good play into the Fuvalos, because it doesn't really summon a lot from the deck or extra deck. But I guess we have to factor in the fact that with us being in a best of 1 format, we might not see a lot of main deck Fuvaloses, but maybe we will. This is kind of hard to tell. I would say in a world where we see a lot of people playing Fuvalos in the main deck, the new Maxi basically, we obviously will see it in Temper Dragon, but in a world where not a lot of people are playing Fuvalos in the main, this is, I guess, more of a potential or don't get it deck. But in a world where there is a lot of Fuvalos, it's a more potential deck. The main thing that holds this deck back, and why I might want to put it here if we don't see a lot of Fuvalos in the meta, is that it's extremely expensive, right? So if it would be cheap as Goblin Bikers, I would say definitely one of the best investments here, no matter what the situation with Fuvalos will be. But for now, let's assume that we will see a lot of Fuvalos in the main deck, and I think then it's a more potential deck, but keep in mind it's very expensive. We have Unchained here with the new support wave, basically. Still a very solid deck, really struggles into Maxi, will also struggle into more Fuvaloses or more Purulias, unfortunately. The Dominus Impulse is also very good against this. So these are the major cards that you have to keep in mind when thinking about future formats, basically. I also think that the Ryziel matchup will not be that great. I can't really tell you get Unchained, honestly. I guess this is one of the decks, of the many decks that probably will go here. Same as with Heroes, no really big support in the future. It's also not a strong deck right now and is very expensive, so Heroes I would honestly not get. Telements also a deck that I would not really recommend, as this is definitely on a downwarding trend. We had this little comeback moment before they basically hit the field spell to 1, but from here on out I think it will only get worse. It's also expensive. Telements, the time is basically over. We will have to wait for an additional support wave, which will most likely be in way in the future. So I wouldn't invest in Telements. Labyrinth, on the other hand, I think is a very good investment. Might be one of the best investments. From a price standpoint, it is okay. It has definitely become a bit more expensive with more extra deck shenanigans that it can effectively play. In the beginning, it was really, really cheap. But the fact or the thing that makes Labyrinth so strong, in my opinion, we will receive additional support cards for this in the future in the form of new trap cards. Like, for example, the Equation Cannon. I was at the TCG event on the weekend that I won with Temper Dragon, but in the finals I lost against a Labyrinth player which used the Equation Cannon against me. So Labyrinth as the prime trap deck in the format will definitely receive a lot of support in the future, not in the form of its own cards, but in the form of traps. And the cool thing about Labyrinth is that you can tag it against every meta that you are basically in. So go in, put in the Rumor Karma Cannons, put in, I don't know, Dimensional Barriers, depending on what you need, what the meta is doing. Let's talk about the other trap deck as long as we are here. I would say trap deck's also a trap deck. The two trap decks, I would say, is definitely a don't get, since Labyrinth is that much stronger. Investing in Labyrinth is a very good idea. Keep in mind, though, that if you're a beginner and you are thinking of which deck to take, that Labyrinth is a deck that doesn't really play like any other deck. Trap decks are definitely different from combo decks or from other mid-rangey decks. So keep that in mind, but Labyrinth a good investment. The Raid Raptor, I don't know, never really came together. Also isn't that cheap. The Raid Raptor cards themselves are not that expensive, but then there are also other cards that you need, the Raiders Knight and stuff. That are expensive, so, and Arsenal Falcon stuff, but I guess these are Raid Raptor cards. But in the end, for what you have to pay for this deck and what this deck brings to the table, not that great. I would definitely put it in the don't get it category. Not as bad as the other decks, since this can establish you can't out me boss monster, and these basically outable boss monsters or not outable boss monsters that can't really be interacted with can come up in some metas where they're the best meta decks can't basically hit them, and then you would need to side deck against them. But in the world where we are playing a lot of hand traps, this deck is definitely very bad. We have Dinos, also a deck that I would not get expensive, not that strong, but probably will receive support here and there in the future, but would need big support in order to be good. Same thing with Sprite. Sprite is kind of like Telements. The time is just over. It's not a bad deck by any means. It's also not super expensive. The good thing for Sprite, I guess, is that in the future, when additional rank link 2s come out, they basically fit in this archetype and could make it big once again. So this is something to keep in mind. We have the illusion stuff here, which we will still receive more support in the form of the diabellstar for. So I think there's actually a potential deck here. I wouldn't call it like more potential or even best investment, but this is not that bad, not that cheap, unfortunately, but something that you could invest in. Saw some play in the TCG with basically kind of a lock strategy, if you want to call it that, where you could lock your opponent out from just playing spells with the diabellstar. This was quite effective. So it has potential, definitely, but on the lower side of decks I would craft, if I would even craft it. So we have Temper Dragon here, and Temper Dragon, in my opinion, it's a bit tough to say. I wouldn't say its best investment as is Labyrinth, also because it is expensive. It is very strong at the moment, the strongest deck, but it will definitely receive some hits. But I also think that it will be a good deck for the foreseeable future. Even with Chandra, for example, and the field spell going to 1, this is still very strong. So I would definitely put it in more potential, but this definitely has a please hit me shield on its back. So this is something to keep in mind. We have a Sword Soul here. Sword Soul will get new support in the future and is a very cheap and beginner friendly deck. Also not weak and will be stronger again in the future, which is why I would put it in potentially in the middle of the potential category. You can still, I think, get it for free with this friendship thing, so keep that in mind. We have Rescue Ace, and as long as this complete fire engine thing is in the mix and is playable, and also with the Asamina cards in the future, this definitely is a deck with potential. It's not that cheap, but you will be able to play this in some way or another in the foreseeable future. We have Branded, which they really hit Branded, and they try to take everything away from Branded. Branded is a really nice deck, also very expensive, a lot of ultra rares, but honestly I think that I'm not quite sure whether we'll see even more Branded hate in the future. But Branded is just a deck that is very strong, that can play through a lot of things, can establish really strong boards, and so I would put it here probably at the bottom of the more potential category. This has been around for so long, longer than stuff like Telements or Sprite, and it's still very nice, but I would definitely put it at the bottom here. We have the new Voiceless Voice, sorry, not Voiceless Voice, Melodious, that is, obviously has support received right now. Not super expensive, not that cheap, but I honestly have to say I would put it in the don't get it category. It's not a bad deck, but it also will not be better in the future, and with more Maxi-ish effects around, it's also not great for this deck, since it doesn't really establish anything in the beginning of the game like Telements could do with the kit colors. We have Sky Striker, what I am talking about. We have Dragon Link represented here. Dragon Link, this is a tough one. It definitely has come back with some of the limitations here, but I would say this is a don't get deck. There are definitely better ones to grab here. Obviously, any dragon releasing in the future could be support for this. So I guess we could put it somewhere here at the bottom of the potential category. This can play the Bestials. That can be nice in a light and fire, light and dark format, which we see a lot of. So let's put it here at the bottom of potential. We have Pearly, which I would also either at the top here, because it's the same situation as with Raid Raptor. They can establish a really hard to out end boss monster, but it kind of has been power crept. It's not that expensive. Will receive some support in the far future, I guess, but will not receive any obvious support, not like in Labyrinth deck or the Sprite deck, for example, where they could just like profit from general support, from generic support, I mean. So I would put it in the don't get it category, same as with Super Heavy Samurai. The time is definitely over, has some hits, and yeah, the next support wave is way off. A very heavy combo deck, not a bad deck by any stretch of the imagination, but I wouldn't go there. Light Swan, same thing, he has just received some support, isn't that great, and probably won't be great in the future. We have a Vanquish Soul, which Vanquish Soul can play some interesting cards in the form of mainly Dimension Shifter, honestly, and its place into the Fuvalos are actually not that bad, since we are not special summoning from the deck a lot, but from the hand, and not that much from the exo deck, only the Link 1 basically, so that is kind of nice, which is why I would put it here somewhere in the middle of the potential category. Definitely not a bad deck, where you can decide on what hand traps you want to play, if they fit in the Dark Fire Earth theme, obviously. We have Memento, which I think has a lot of potential here, definitely in the more potential category at the top here. If we get Fiendsmith, the Fiendsmith engine, and then the remaining Memento cards. Memento also an archetype that is extremely cheap. Let me put it over Tenpai here, actually, or this actually feels wrong. Let me put it on Tenpai. It's very cheap, will receive nice support in the future, will receive a nice supporting engine in the future, and will be one of the strongest decks in the meta in the future, I think. We have the Ragnar stuff here, which represents Rika, because you will always see this with Rika. Rika is also a deck that I would say it's very tough to make a good call on Rika. And Ragnar, everything that is planned will always be helpful here. But I think when it comes to the power level and how much you need to invest in this deck to play it good, and then also the cost, I would definitely put it at the top of the don't get it category. We have Silver here, Dark World has the Silver Unvent now, very interesting at least. So this comes at the top of the don't get it category, which is good, actually. Don't get me wrong here, it's not like what, okay, he said don't get the Dark World stuff. It's not great, it's just not a great deck. It's better now, but I wouldn't say this is like future investment potential. We have the thing here that I don't even remember what this is being called. Void Agnister Void? No, sorry. Void irgendwas. Void something, so this is just don't get it. It's just a bad deck and will remain a bad deck. We have Kashtira, can play in a Dimension Shifter format, but has a lot of stuff limited or hit, basically. This is still a deck with potential, I think, also because Unicorn and Fenrir are just that strong, and I think in the future we could see some unlimitations of these cards. Then again, Fenrir is such a generic good monster that we might not see an unlimitation of him just because he is so good. I would put it here at the bottom of the potential category. We have Exo Sister, definitely a strong deck that can also play Shifter, so that's nice. At the top of the don't get it category is where I will put this. We have this new Jandora and sarcophagus stuff here. Go somewhere at the bottom, don't get this deck. We have Mefmec. Honestly, this still has some potential because in the future. So this kind of represents mech cyber stuff, because in the future we will receive the new archetype, not the Riser but the Malice, which goes together with all of these cybers monsters. And because we still have the mech not the diameter, but the circular at 3. I think we will also see the mech stuff in the deck, at least a small engine. So this might be at the top of the potential or bottom of the more potential category. It's still very strong, actually. The combo it can achieve is still very strong. It has a nice play into 10 pies, so I would definitely put it at the top of the potential category here. We have a Yubel definitely nice, will get a new support in the future with the Fiendsmith engine, one of the decks with the most potential for sure, but also a target on its back when it comes to further hits here. We have Salamangreat, solid deck, but nothing that is really going to support the deck in the future. We have just received new support, basically. It's not that long ago. We have the Year of the Fire behind us now, which means we will not get even more fire support in the future, at least not that much. So I would say it's in the middle of the don't get it category somewhere here. Same as with Vanadium. This deck, yeah, I don't know. This never really worked out in Master Duel. It's not a bad deck, but it's just one of these combo decks that don't really work out. Put it under Salamangreat here. We have Fire King. Fire King, I don't think it's Fire King Snake Eyes, obviously. The Pure Fire King. Pure Fire King would be in the don't get it category. It's way too expensive for what it does. It's basically nothing. This will get nice support in the future with the Fiendsmith and the Azamina engine. So this is still one of the best investments, I would say, honestly. Will remain meta relevant for a while. We have Marincess, don't invest in this. We have Centurion, one of the bests in my opinion, will get amazing support in the future, at least in my opinion. Not as good as the other ones, I would say, but the support for this is super nice, giving you the ability to play two Cosmic Blazer Dragons. The format will potentially slow down a bit, and in such a format, Centurion will be great. We have Archfiend stuff here, don't get this deck. And then Snake Eyes, I would also put it here. I have to put it over Centurion, I guess, because Azamina as well as Fiendsmith will make this deck once again very, very great. We have Sky Striker, yeah, nothing too fancy here. Sky Striker is not a bad deck. You can always kind of play it in different metas. I would put it at the top of don't get it. We have Lorna don't get it. Too many hits, doesn't really work out. And I would never have gotten the Ancient Gear deck, honestly. This has just received support and I would not get it. Nothing that is coming up that really helps this deck. Go play Temper if you want to go second deck. Also, they are dragons and they are machines, so do I need to say anything more? But now I'm very interested in your opinion. Let me know what you think of my tier list here. Thanks for being here. Let me know in the comments, all your opinions. This is my what should you get, what are the best deck investments for the future tier list. Thanks for being here. If you like my content, please consider subscribing, hitting a thumbs up and the notification bell, and we will see each other in the next one, guys. Bye.